Welcome to a Community Partners interview where we explore the organizations, opportunities, and resources that look to make change in our daily lives. I'm your host, Jocelyn Dore, and you're listening to Voices for Ability Radio, all abilities, all the time. Today, I'm joined from Carly, who is the Executive Director of the Autism Centre of Toronto. Autism Centre for Toronto's mission is to improve the lives of children with autism and their families by providing early and equitable access to evidence-based treatments within a positive, supportive learning environment. Their individualized programs are designed to be effective, compassionate, and lead to meaningful, lasting outcomes. Thank you for joining us today, Carly.
Hi, it's my pleasure to be here.
So tell us a little bit more about you and what inspired you to work at the Autism Sector for Toronto and to work for individuals with disabilities.
Sure. I started this journey, I guess, many years ago. I was a high school student at the time. So I attended North Toronto Collegiate Institute in Toronto. And I met a fellow student. She was a little younger than me. I was probably grade 11 or 12 at the time. And I think she was probably a ninth grader. That was a student at the school, and she was in a special education program, but through inclusion programs, was attending the same high school as me. And I had never met somebody like her before. She was non-speaking, sort of behaved in ways that I had never really encountered before. She did have somebody that assisted her, from what I could tell, for most of her school day. And she had, a device that assisted her in speech and things like this. I was just curious. And so I learned that she had autism, and I started learning a lot more about autism. At the time, this was before there was really access to internet searches. And so I actually had to do sort of library research and do what I could as far as reading books, and I watched some videos and things where I just became curious, and I spent time with her as well. I think I sort of became like a peer, a peer mentor. And I would spend time with her at her house, and I learned a little bit about the therapies that she was receiving. And I thought that was just so interesting. And so obviously that set me on my path. I didn't know at the time, but towards what I wanted to do in my own career and life. So I knew that I wanted to study something that was related. I didn't know if I would become a special education teacher, a therapist of some sort. And so from there, I fell a little bit into behavioral science, which was ultimately what I studied in my graduate work. And I ended up going to the United States. I moved to Boston after my undergraduate program at McGill, where I studied kinesiology and psychology. So sort of nothing very specific, but I ended up going to work at the New England Center for Children in Boston and study applied behavior analysis at Northeastern University. And that's when I just really knew that I was in the field that I really felt passion for and learned so much. And fast forward today, I spent more than about 17 years in the States. I did my master's and PhD in applied behavior analysis, and I worked with mainly children with autism and other developmental disabilities in lots of different capacities, in public schools, in private schools, in residential schools, and then I moved back to Canada in 2018 with my family. I had 3 kids, and it was sort of time for us to come back to where my family was. We didn't have anybody down in the States. And I didn't really expect to start something on my own here in Toronto. But at the same time, I was really not seeing the same types of programs and services that I had been able to be a part of there. And particularly in early intervention, that I really felt passion for. And that's how I kind of ended up starting something a little bit reluctantly, to be honest. And that's how we started.
Can you tell me about the programs that you have to offer?
Yeah. So at TACT, which is what we sort of affectionately call the Autism Centre of Toronto, I mentioned we have a real focus on early intervention. So we have kids as young as 2, and sometimes a little bit earlier than 2, that can start in our program. We have a small center. We have 3 classrooms, and in our early learning classroom, we'll have kids that are the youngest, and they're learning in a really wonderful group setting, but they're getting highly individualized programming. And so we offer applied behavior analysis, speech therapy, and occupational therapy. And children will attend for anywhere from 5 to let's see, 5 to 15 hours a week, probably for our littlest. And they're working one-to-one with a instructor therapist, and they're supervised by registered behavior analysts, and working on their communication and their social interaction, their play skills, their self-help, toileting. We're really working on foundational skills for those littlest ones. And we're just wanting to build a really strong foundation to then be able to help to bridge any gaps in development that might be occurring, and help them catch up in their learning, so that they continue to progress in learning in many ways as they move into into kindergarten and beyond. That's our biggest goal. So that's our early intervention program. And then we have a developmental kindergarten to grade 2 classroom. And for kids that have maybe been through early intervention, they're ready for the next step. They've built that really strong foundation, but they're ready for more group instruction, learning in a group, more academic readiness, school readiness, but they might not be quite ready for launching into the big school system. So because there's such a big gap there, or such a big jump there for kids that have been, who have had some delays in their development, and they've made lots of progress, but that's a really huge jump to go from learning in a one-to-one setting, then plopping into a junior kindergarten classroom. So our developmental classroom helps to bridge that, and gives them a year or 2 to really practice school routines and continue to develop their foundational skills. So that's our developmental class, and then we have school age ABA therapy, speech, and OT as well, for kids that are grade 1 and up. Sometimes they're attending school for part of the time, but they still have a little bit to work on, whether it's some academic gaps, whether it's executive functioning, social interaction, self-help, anything that kids are still learning. And so they may come to us for part of their week to continue to work on tailor those skills for their development. And then we also have school support programs. So for some kids that are attending a school full time, but still need some support to be successful in school, and we are able to provide some support in those schools as well.
So, knowing that everyone has their own journey through life, what would a common journey through Autism Centre for Toronto look like for one of your clients?
Yeah. A common journey. So I think it's actually really hard to say that there's a common journey because I think, as you just said, it's going to be so different for every individual, and that just couldn't be more true in my experience. But I can highlight a little bit what it can look like. And so, we've had one of our youngest kids that came in at 20 months, who had been identified quite early, for developmental delays, and wasn't progressing as far as his language development, wasn't talking, wasn't really engaging socially, wasn't meeting their milestones. And he was really sort of exhibiting some of the more repetitive behavior that can look like the child's really gone quite inward. So, so if we were in a room playing together, he would be, instead of looking to see what someone else was playing with or doing or paying attention to that, he was kind of really looking at, the lines on the floor and wanting to follow them in a particular pattern. Or if he couldn't get that quite right, he would actually start hitting his head. And when you see a 20-month-old with that frustration already, it's pretty heartbreaking. And so we started with him so young and really just started working on his communication and pointing to communicate, and joint attention, which is really that earliest social skill of being able to socially relate with other people. And he probably worked about 15 hours a week from the beginning. And he would come in with his mom quite a lot. We did a lot with his mom as well. I didn't mention before, but we work quite a lot with the family so that they're part of the process and learning everything that we're doing, so that they're also learning the skills and help and being able to support their children. And so we would work with the mom a lot. And he, it wasn't even it's not linear, so for him, he might have had a big progress in the first 6 months to a year, and really moving along, and then maybe would have, and then move into our developmental classroom, and it didn't go perfectly for him. And so we had to step back and say, okay, well, let's come back to what works for him, and let's make sure that we're individualizing at the level that he needs. And so we kept working with him over that year in the way that he needed. And then this year he was able to then move into his junior kindergarten class, with a little bit of support from the school. We worked with a really wonderful school to support him in that transition, and is mostly able to be there quite independently now. So really, that's that's our goal. We want to be able to bring kids through the program early, and then have them be able to transition to their neighborhood school where their siblings and their peers are attending as well.
Are there any restrictions to the services at Autism Centre for Toronto, such as age, caregivers, or family members only, things of that nature?
Okay, I just to clarify, restrictions for who can attend,
like who can join and be part of your services. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I would say our only restriction, if you will, would be age, because we're small. We're a small setting, and so we have 3 classrooms, and so we serve kids up to about 12, and beyond that, it's such a small space that we really can't. It just doesn't fit. We don't have enough room for growing right now into adolescent and teen kids. Even though we would love to be able to serve them, it's more of a space thing for us. So I'd say age is that one sort of barrier, if you will. Otherwise, there's no restrictions. No.
Without using any names, can you share a success story with me? What supports were put into place when someone asked for help?
Yeah. We have we had a family say that they really wanted their child to be able to get a haircut, and that had been just an issue. I mean, for his whole life, whether it was they weren't able to go to a hair cutting place, nor were they even able to have him tolerate haircuts at home, and everything right down to getting his hair wet was just too much and too difficult and distressing. And that was a big goal for them. And we incorporated kind of a hair cutting practice routine every day for him, where he would practice first just putting on a robe that was similar to what you would see at a hair cutting place, um, being able to sit down in a chair and have the chair get risen up similar, and then little by little, then each step. So being able to get your hair wet with a spray bottle, um, and then being able to tolerate like seeing, and then maybe touching some of the tools. So the scissors, and then of course the sound of like a buzzer was a big one, and it was a practice skill that took place every day, really, for a long, probably a month of really solid practice, maybe two, and then and to the point where then he was able to have maybe a small haircut here. We had one of our talented therapists actually knew how to cut hair a little bit, so she would be able to just do a little bit of practice. But ultimately, the big success was when his parents let us know that weekend they just said, let's try, and they stopped into I think Supercuts, and he did it, and he did it, and he sort of with and was relaxed and happy doing it. Wasn't that he would did it and was upset. He was totally relaxed and was able to do it with sort of joy and enjoyment in the process. So that was a really big success story.
Are there any events coming up for Autism Centre for Toronto?
Yes, we are part of, we're a registered charity. And so this year we're going to be part of the Toronto Waterfront Marathon weekend. And there's there's a 5K on Saturday. I think it's the 16th of October. And so we have a charity team, and people can sign up for the 5K, and they can choose our team to be part of that charity team if they want. And we're really looking forward to that.
What is one thing that you see happening over and over again to individuals with disabilities that shouldn't be? And how do you think it could be stopped?
Mm. I mean, for me, I have to say the biggest thing that I find very challenging to see happening is school exclusions. And so, where schools are not prepared and equipped and resourced to meet the needs of every child, and including children with autism, developmental disabilities, with a range of needs, who really have every right to attend public school. And what happens in reality is that schools say that they can't manage, or they don't have enough resources to do so, and families are told that their child can't attend that day, or can only attend part time, or half a day or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, that's exclusion, and really should never be okay. It's not okay, and it should never happen. But it just seems to continue to happen in practice. So that for me is something that just has to change.
If someone wants to become a member or a volunteer with Autism Center for Toronto, what is the process for joining as a member and as a volunteer?
They would just reach out to us. Our email address is info@autismtoronto.ca, and send a resume if they're interested in volunteering or in a job. Also, they can read job descriptions on our website. But that's the best way, is just emailing that address. And when we have openings or we have opportunities, we're always happy to have people join. We also we work closely with some of the colleges and universities, particularly for people who are studying in behavioral science, and they are able to complete practicum fieldwork with us. So that's also a really nice way for us to have people who are interested and still learning come through, and we're able to give them a little bit of training and experience.
What is the one thing that everyone needs to know about Autism Center for Toronto?
I think I have a big smile, so I love when people visit here, because I just always it's really wonderful for me when I have new people come, because it kind of is always the same feedback when people say, wow, it's so joyful here. Like it's, I mean, that's sort of what I always hear, is that people see kind of the joy in the kids that are here, and in the teachers and the staff. And that just makes me really proud that's what people see, because that's what we feel. And we're here really every day, working hard, but playing hard, but here to really make a huge difference in a child's life. And I think it's just not lost on me or on any of my team that the work matters. And I think it's just important to keep in mind that we're impacting these kids' lives and their families' lives. But we have a great time doing it, and we just celebrate so much the progress that we see.
If listeners are looking for more information, how can they reach out to you?
I think, again, the email address, info@autismtoronto.ca. Our website is www.autismtoronto.ca. And that's the best way to reach me and us.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for joining us today. I really enjoyed learning about the Autism Center for Toronto.
Thank you so much. This was a pleasure.
This has been a Community Partners interview on Voices for Ability Radio, all abilities, all the time.